Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another edition of the Cuban Assassin podcast. Hi, I'm your host, Richie Acevedo, also known as the Cuban Assassin. Last time when we left off with Steve Padunovac bringing in and making a fake Cuban assassin, or an imposter, if you will, where his territories that he was booking at in certain parts of West Virginia and Kentucky. But meanwhile, while he was doing that, of course, my dad took his family, my mom, Yvonne, my sister, Cindy, and myself up to the Great White North up in Montreal for Grand Prix Wrestling up there for him to start the next venture of his professional wrestling career. And Grand Prix Wrestling was promoted and booked by none other than the Vachons, Paul the Butcher Vachon and Maurice Mad Dog Vachon. And of course, they had their lovely and the great talented Vivian Vachon there as well. But not only did my dad take his family up there to Montreal, but Gene Madrid from WYTV4 Sunday Night Wrestling as well took his family, but Gene Madrid was known around the world as none other than Gypsy Joe. That's right, the hardcore legend himself, Gypsy Joe. And Gypsy Joe would also get booked up there for the Vachons in Montreal for Grand Prix Wrestling, and he brought his family. He took his lovely, attractive, and model-like wife, Jeanette. And Jeanette was a very nice woman from my memories. But not only did he take Jeanette up there with him, but he also took his daughter, Janae. And in this picture, you see Janae with my sister Cindy sitting on Santa Claus' lap around Christmas time. Of course, I'm not in the picture because I was terrified of Santa Claus back in those days. I'm still a little terrified of Santa Claus to this very day, to be honest. But nonetheless, he brought his family up there. And of course, Dad and Gypsy Joe, as we know him, Gene Madrid in West Virginia, were childhood friends who grew up in Puerto Rico together and also happened to be wrestling together up in Canada. But while they were wrestling and taking their families up in Canada, I remember one time there was a guy downstairs, and my dad and Gypsy Joe went downstairs because the guy was beating his wife, and my dad and Gypsy Joe beat the crap out of that guy, beat the living daylights out of him. Meanwhile, while Dad was in Canada, he was tag team with Frank Sieberstein, who was going as Raul Acevedo, and they were the Cuban Assassins. And while they were wrestling as the Cuban Assassins in Montreal for Grand Prix Wrestling for the Vachons, they would end up meeting a wrestler by the name of Emile Dupree. And the thing that's significant about Emile Dupree being up there wrestling at this time is that Emile Dupree was help promoting a territory in his hometown, the Maritimes, which would become known as, that's right, you guessed it, the great territory of Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling over in the Maritimes, which covered in Shediac, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, and Newfoundland and parts of Quebec. Let's take a look at a match of Emile Dupree against Maurice Mad Dog Vachon while he was in Montreal wrestling. So Emile Dupree brought Dad and Frank over into the Maritimes to wrestle all over the territory, which was New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, Newfoundland, and parts of Quebec. And Dad and Frank were wrestling every night. I mean, they were working every night. They were gone every day. And Frank's family would be at home at the cottage beside us. And, of course, Mom, Cindy, and myself would be at the cottage. And Cindy and I had a fun time playing with Frank's daughter and son over there in the Maritimes of New Brunswick, where we stayed at in Shediac, New Brunswick. But Dad and Frank were wrestling all the time, and Mom would do things to help pass time, like have us paint pine cones with fingernail polish. But we had a fun time growing up during this time while Dad and Frank was gone wrestling every night. But let's take a look at Dad and Frank wrestling in a tag team match here.
All right, we've taken our commercial break, and Johnny, we're right back to the action. Nick DiCarlo, yours truly, and the Cuban Assassins.
And they're still working on that arm. The key with these boys is that they can wrestle, and they keep constantly tagging out and coming in with a fresh partner. And if you can do that, good time. And the referee should have seen that time.
All right. Right into Nick. Great action. The crowd at this point was on its feet and yelling, "Go, Johnny, go." And knew that, which had to pump up the old adrenaline.
It feels good, you know.
Home crowd advantage.
Exactly that, right. Any athlete who's competing in any sport, when he feels the support of the audience there, and you feel better. You don't want to let them down. You function basically as an individual, and your own sense of pride says, well, I don't want to look bad in the ring. I want to compete as strongly and as well as I can. But when you've got a bunch of people there that are kind of looking out for you and looking after you to support-wise, you just let out a little better. Hard bump, no, it's not in the corner post there.
I understand that the Cuban Assassins now, they were in Winston-Salem a couple of weeks ago. They will be wrestling throughout the Carolinas during the months to come.
Right, in Virginia, too, all through the IWA network down here on the East Coast. This is where I thought I had them, but it shows the resilience, the strength of both of them. The partner came in to give him that extra couple-second breather, and if he doesn't get up, right, I thought most men cannot take a crack to the head like that with a steel post. But he comes out of it. This shows you when an athlete's really in condition, you can take an enormous amount of punishment and still come back and keep the match alive.
Of course, this was a long match. It had to go over 22 to 25 minutes.
It felt like a couple hours in there. There are sometimes, if you're really in shape and you feel you've got your match psyched out, you can coast once in a while. This is not a match where you could coast for a second. If we didn't stay on top of it, we would have lost the belts. There was no question about that. I figured I'd give the Cuban a little exchange on the arm lock that he'd give to Carlo, just so he didn't think they were going to get away with
on the fans jumping up in front of the cameras that were there at the Coliseum.
Wrestling's a spectator sport. I mean, the fans just turn on. They get really involved with
Up and over.
And here's a backdrop that not many wrestlers can take. The fellow had to go up about, I'm 6'4", and if I could mind it by that, it's over 8 foot, so the fellow took an 8 foot backdrop. And he should have stayed down. Nice move. I forgot we did. Strong fellows. They're all over the ring, and it's hard to stay on top of them. The fans, a lot of the fans didn't sit down for the whole match, I don't think. Huh?
That's right. It's so hot. You talk about if anybody's ever boxed, and I know every kid in the country has boxed a round. One round, which is like 3 minutes. You're just
beat.
But this goes on for like 22 to 25 minutes. It was very, very warm under the lights. And of course, when you're taking in and out of the ring, and you're taking shots, sooner or later somebody's going to have to throw in the towel.
It's an example, too, of for all the wrestling fans that are used to watching studio matches, that are taking various locations around the country. This is an example of the atmosphere that's in the arenas and coliseums, and why you should come out when the wrestling matches come to your area. There's a whole different feel and flavor to it in a coliseum environment where there's thousands of people and the fans just make sometimes the building literally vibrate, and the different effects, the lighting effect is different. You know, it's when you're just seeing the studio environment, you see, you know, or a TV auditorium, you might see 200 or 300 or 400 people sometimes, but here you see literally thousands of people, and they're just, you really get into it, and this is what makes the wrestling fans come out. Once he's come down and he's seen the product as this is here on the Coliseum. They just keep on coming out.
I thought this was it, but off the top rope. And that is why the IWA promoters decided to go out and tape this match in Winston-Salem, so we could put it on television along the IWA network and let the fans just see the match from the Coliseum standpoint. And of course, you don't have the time limit. On television, we're working on an hour.
Right.
And so you don't, some of these matches, you know, the last three I know at the Coliseum were hour time limits. So in every match, I think the last three went over 20 minutes. And of course, on television, when you are restricted to an hour of TV time, you cannot have a match that goes on and on and on and on. Because of the time.
There's different times. There are 15 and 20 minute time limit matches on television.
Besides the atmosphere you were talking about that you get in the Coliseum, where you have
and you see
large
top
crowds.
And you see top matchmaking too. The promoters go all out to make sure that their matchmakers come up with exciting combinations, and that the fans will want to see and come down and get good box office results, because that's where a promoter is really at, right? He's interested in a lot of people coming down, so he's got to supply a good product in the Coliseum arena.
Got to pay those bills, like any business. And of course, we've got a great match coming up, so stay with us. You're going to see the magnificent Zulu, and he is that, against Dick the Bulldog Brower on this hour.
Big dude. Yeah.
Yes, he is.
And there's an example. The referee should have been a little tighter in that. If they're going to, another man's going to come in, it should be a legal tag.
He's got like a basic claw hold there.
Yeah, it's a nerve hole that digs deep in the side of the neck and into the trapezius area.
Yeah, that's smart. Right off the top rope. All right, now you don't like to watch this.
This
Not great fond of memories here.
He's got a leg grapevine on and an arm bar, and doing a good job on that. And the body weight, I probably outweighed him by maybe 10, 15 pounds. But the way he's positioned on top, it's hard. You can tell I was doing my best to get out of it. And I'm not moving very far because he's got a good leg grapevine on me. Good position. And this is an example where you can ride your man and wear him out. He's got to lift your body weight and his body weight too, right? So he's got a double workload there. Straight arm bar.
And now you've been in the ring a good 6 to 8 minutes.
Right. Good ring strategy, both assassins. A hard team to work against. Very hard team to wrestle.
Just a couple of weeks ago in the Winston-Salem Memorial Coliseum, taped highlights of the tag team championship battle between Nick DiCarlo, Johnny Powers, the current IWA tag team title holders, and the Cuban Assassins. We also want to make mention that IWA Wrestling will be returning to Winston-Salem May the 27th. That's a Friday night at 8:30 with an all-star lineup. I understand Zulu is returning, and Hez Watley, and Big Bad John, Brower, you'll be there, DiCarlo, Stroheim, Danny Little Bear, who's a new wrestler to the area.
Right.
It's going to be a great program. May the 27th at 8:30. It's a Friday night. And again, you have not managed to get over, and I know you're trying to make that. Do you ever lose where you're at in the ring? Like, where is DiCarlo? Is he over here? Is he over there? My Lord, where is the man? I've got to make the tag. I'm tired and I'm hot. I need a break. I need to catch my breath. Do you ever lose exactly where you're at.
Your ring sense, sure. I think any wrestler says it doesn't is not telling like it is. If you're really positioned there and you concentrate on one thing, if you're concentrating on your opponent, you can't always keep aware of what else is going on outside the ring. But you try to as much as you can, as quickly as you can, or you don't survive in that ring. Depending on your ability to keep it all together in a tag match, you've got to take advantage of every opening and every breather. That's what makes tag team matches exciting. They originated in Australia. The formal title is Australian Tag Team Wrestling. And there's just so much more action goes on in a tag match because you can tag off and get out of that and let a fresh man come out. Here's an example. Nick's all around there. He's going to do a job of it. It's a fantastic move. Look at a slingshot into the corner bucket. And building a new face there.
And again.
Another example.
This is a fantastic
Good
move.
point.
Right over the top rope and out.
That should have been the match right there.
And another
Good frog smash. Good shot.
We got them both out. Here comes number 1 and number 2. I don't know their names either. Hard to tell them apart.
Suplex. Oh. Good setup for finishing.
He came back.
Short tackles. Side. We're going to side hip lock him, and their arms locked and right on top of. It's a freaky move. I've never seen it happen before in wrestling. An attempt at a side hip lock and almost a completion. That was the other assassin going to try to double team Nick on the floor. And
All
just
four
wasn't going to
wrestlers are
happen
out
as
of
long
the
as I
ring
could walk.
And the count is on from the referee, Mr. Dodson. And now it's all over.
I don't think any of us were aware, except the one assassin was trying to get back in the ring there.
Right.
Aware of the timing that was going on there.
There was a count out. And what do you get? 30 seconds?
20 count on the
20?
floor, 10 in the apron,
So,
and a 4 count with a 5 as a disqualification on the ropes if you don't break.
Disqualification. All 4 wrestlers were outside the ring. And let's see what happens.
Neither Nick and I were aware of. We should have been watching the time closer and got back in the ring. And would have had a better shot at it, a much better shot.
Of course, it's hard to tell with that much noise and that much confusion of exactly what's going on.
So while Dad was touring in the Maritimes in 1975, he and Mom had decided that Mom would bring me and Cindy back to her hometown where she was born in Oak Hill, West Virginia, to enroll me in school that fall of 1975. And then the following year, in 1976, my sister Cindy would be enrolled in the same school, Oak Hill Elementary School. At this time, Dad and Frank were wrestling for Stu Hart's Calgary Stampede Wrestling. And while they was up there, they won the Calgary Stampede Wrestling International Tag Team Championship titles. And then from there, Dad and Frank were everywhere. They were in magazines, and they would go over into Japan and wrestle over in Japan. They'd be in wrestling magazines in Japan. And Dad and Frank were being very successful wrestling in Japan and also in the Maritimes in Canada and over for Calgary Stampede Wrestling. And Dad and Frank would be featured in a bunch of wrestling books and wrestling magazines at newsstands. So they were pretty much having a very successful career and one of the top-rated tag teams of professional wrestling at that time. And let's take a look at Dad wrestling over in Japan.
応援団が駆けつけておりまして、ご覧のように花束が贈呈され、おっとかけた、ついに5番の本人袋の緒が切れましたアシュラ原、9番アサシンに向かいました。そしてチョップ、首投げ、蹴りつけます、蹴りつけます。挑発を無視して花束贈呈を受けていた原、その花束をアサシンが一つもみくちゃにしました。ここで怒りが爆発した感じ。9番アサシンが紹介されましたが、ブーイング、9点記念会 体育館のお客様からブーイング。そして芦田原182センチ136ポンド、注目の芦田原の対戦特大戦勝てました。飛び込みました16戦、それをうまくさすが芦田原進む。改めまして芦田原が3発4発フライングキック、そしてラグビータックルが出ました。その水野のシングル実現には何としても今日のこのアサシンがロープで外にトップロープのシフトにました。グラウンドでのサイドヘッドロックが決まっております芦田原。おっとローリングして原の肩口をスピンさせようという9番アサシン。しかし非常にバランスのいい動きでこれをディフェンスいたしました芦田原。依然としてサイドヘッドロック。おそらくこれは9番差し、ちょっと体勢が低かったが門馬さん、バックドロップを狙った感じでしたね。
このアサシンの場合はですね、ロープ際、それからコーナー際、それから返し技、そういった逆転がありますからね。原選手が自分なりのペースと思って攻めてもですね、返されますからね。そこら辺ですね、一番怖いのは。
今度は横からのベアハッグ、サバ折り気味に締め上げます9番アサシン。昨年の7月日本を出発いたしました原進、カナダのカルガリー、そして東部のブランズウィックを転戦いたしました。そして昨年9月にはオッツカウント1、ヨーロッパの西ドイツで行われましたハノーバー国際トーナメントに出場いたしまして、見事4位入賞。原進がホールの体勢に乗っています。
ああいうボディスラムがいいですね。
そうですね、
やはり力反応をつけてね。
ようやく攻撃のきっかけをつかみました9番アサシン。強引に芦田原の髪の毛を取りまして引き起こしました。そして大きくホイップいたしました。セカンドロープの上から芦田原の体がリング下に転落いたしました。9番アサシンもリング下を降りた。エプロンのところから大きくスタンピング、そして原進の障害弾頭に巻き込みました。大きく本部席の、机に一つ叩きつけまして9番アサシンそうそうとリング内に戻りました。
このアサシンですがね、随分荒っぽくなりましたね。
なりました、かつてはいわゆるキューバの暗殺団ということでコンビを組んで戦闘になりましたが、そのいわゆる暗殺団タッグチームは一昨年すでに解散したそうであります9番アサシン。このアサシンをまたレッグロック、芦田原が足を封じての攻撃を見せます。あるいはこのパイオニアシリーズ中スミルノフとのシングルマッチが実現かという大きな話題を呼び起こしました芦田原。そしてその後の原進にまつわる話題を拾ってみますと、3月にはヨーロッパの WWU ジュニアヘビー級チャンピオンのミル・スルノとのタイトルマッチが予定されております。大きく持ち上げた、叩きつけました芦田原。この辺りは実にスケールの大きい豪快な攻め方を見せております。凱旋帰国第1戦終電記念体育館の神宮上の芦田原。
今の攻めですがね、先ほどのボディスラムとああいった力技ね、原選手らしいものをこれから一つ作っていけばね、これかなりの大型レスラーになってきますね。
その原をロープに飛ばした。帰ってくるところカウンターのキッチンシンクが出ました。2バットアサシンの攻撃、ちょっと動きが止まりましたが原進む胸板を蹴りつけますアサシン。リングサイドセコンドについております。先ほどそのコメントを皆様にお届けいたしました稲妻二郎が頑張れ頑張れという大きな声援、ロープに飛んだ。そして肩口から当たった。もう一発ロープに飛んだ。さあそのアサシンを捉えて最後スープレックスが決まった。ホールの体勢に入った。カウンターびっくりしました。おめでとう芦田原。凱旋帰国第一戦見事に飾りました。
Now, one time after Dad and Frank had finished their tour in Japan, they flew over to Hawaii and they wrestled there and had a layover. So they spent time on the beach to enjoy themselves before they went to Calgary Stampede Wrestling for Stu Hart. Frank loved the scenery so much, he looked at Dad and said he wants to bring his wife Valerie there. And Dad said, well, Frank, you can't. We have to go to Stu. We got to leave out tomorrow. And Frank, he just looked at the sea and the ocean, and he calmly looked over at my dad, and he told my dad, he said, well, then I quit wrestling. Next time on the Cuban Assassin podcast, we'll see a whole new reformation and a whole new Cuban Assassins tag team. Plus, we'll dwell in for a little bit of my childhood as I was growing up. The Cuban Assassin podcast is produced, directed, written, and edited by me, Richie Acevedo at Mountain Man Productions. Special thanks to Ben Hilton for the opening graphics and closing graphics of today's podcast. Also like to thank Snowman Productions Inc., WrestlingClassics.com, and IWE Wrestling Japan for all the film footage used on today's podcast. Special thanks to Sport Buffs Wrestling Magazine, as well as French Wrestling Magazine, Japanese Wrestling Magazine, and to my late mother, Yvonne Dempsey, for all the family photos used in today's podcast. You can reach me at mountainmanproductions at outlook.com. That's capital M for mountain, capital M for man, and capital P for productions at outlook.com. And you can also leave a comment if you like. So we'll see you next time on the Cuban Assassin podcast. Take care.